Watch this. The reason your loops have zero spin isn't your arm, it's your fingers. And this one fix changes everything. Here's a problem I see in 90% of amateur players. When you loop, your racket face rotation is driven entirely by your forearm and upper arm. That's why your ball has no spin. So how do we fix this? Stop letting the arm do the turning. Instead, just like I teach beginners, use your fingers and wrist to rotate the racket head. Watch, most of you are doing this, where the racket head turns because the forearm is swinging it. The forearm is creating the rotation. For now, take the forearm out of it completely. Practice driving the racket head with your fingers alone. Watch, she tries, and the forearm still takes over. There it is again, the forearm. This attempt is a little better, the racket head starts to turn on its own. Open the racket angle a bit more, that was too hooked over. Now that's closer. Let me tell you, most amateur players get stuck on the same problem. Having clean form just means you can keep the ball on the table consistently, but you don't have a real weapon. You don't have the build for raw power. You might have some explosive strength, but against stronger opponents it's not enough. You need to rely on spin, make them block passively, then attack on the next ball. First ball, heavy spin to the backhand, force a block, then rip the forehand. Or spin to the forehand first, then punch the backhand. That's how you actually win points. You have to win through spin. My partner sends me a ball and I'll show you the key points. Right now, the friction on the ball is generated by the arm swinging upward. Lock the arm in place and let the fingers and wrist create the friction instead. Watch, the ball spins much more. See that arcing trajectory? That high, curving flight path is the signature of heavy spin. That's the first key. Second, after contact, keep the racket face closed. The face should stay pressed over the ball throughout the friction phase. Watch again, my partner feeds another one. Maintain that closed face while you brush. The moment you open up during the stroke, it turns into a push. Keep the face closed, let the racket head turn, and make the motion compact. Even smaller, more compact, more concentrated. There, that one had the arcing trajectory. When your loop comes off the racket, the ball must travel in a high, curving arc. If the flight is flat, you're hitting through the ball too much instead of brushing. There's a little bit of arc now. Watch this one moment right here, this one instant where you snap and stay firm through contact. That single snap solves 90% of your spin problems. Amateur players are missing exactly this. Once you lock in at that moment, even if the rest of your stroke is imperfect, the ball still lands on the table. That one's better, more arc now. After you make contact, deliberately use the racket head to wrap over the ball. Press down on it. Watch, much better now. The face stays closed, there's real friction, and the ball flies in that curving arc. That one had the snap. See the difference? The ball is really biting the rubber now, and the snap is locked in. The ball is biting the rubber and the snap is solid. This is exactly the piece most amateurs are missing. Let me summarize what we've seen through these corrections. First, timing. If you want heavy spin, you must contact the ball at the falling phase of the bounce. Second, the backswing. Before the stroke looked like this, the arm was dragging the racket head through. No matter how hard you swing, that produces almost no spin. Instead, at the moment of contact, initiate with finger power first. The fingers fire, and then the arm follows through. The arm's power and the finger friction should not happen simultaneously. They need to be separate actions. Here's my backswing. Here's my contact point. Here's my acceleration. If you swing and try to brush at the same time, you'll never grip the ball properly. The moment you tighten up in a match, the ball dumps straight into the net. You must let the racket head rotate independently. It's the racket head turning, not the arm dragging the racket head around. I believe that distinction is the single most important point. Watch, this is wrong, arm-driven. And this is correct, racket head-driven. Now, the third issue. The moment many players finish brushing, the arm pushes forward and the racket face flips open. The racket face opens up and it looks like a lever action. Instead, wrap the racket head over the ball. Watch, the racket head should trace a curving path, an arc that follows the surface of the ball. Your racket head needs to travel along that arc, not stop short right here. That last little bit of follow-through makes all the difference. Once you fix this one detail, you unlock both the heavy spin loop and the ability to brush first and then drive forward for a power loop. It's all connected. Now, the contact point. You want to brush along the surface of the ball for the longest possible friction path. Your initial contact can't be on top of the ball and it can't be at the equator. It has to be just above the middle, the upper middle zone. If you push the racket straight forward, it becomes a push instead of a loop. Now your instinct when the racket face is closed might be to lift upward or flick up. I had this habit when I was young, and many players share it. Watch my partner here, notice how the racket face stays pressed forward the entire time, brushing forward with the face closed. So the third key point, keep the racket face closed and drive the racket head forward through the friction. Don't lift. Now the wrist rotation isn't inward, it's forward. Watch this. My partner blocks while I loop. If the wrist turns inward like this, the spin just dies. The wrist curls in and the energy dissipates. A lot of players make this mistake. See, no spin at all. Instead, the wrist should push the racket head forward, pressing through the ball. Watch my wrist, it doesn't curl inward. It drives forward and stops right here. Now watch when I loop this way, feel how much heavier the spin is. My partner can feel the difference immediately on the block. But if I curl the wrist inward, the ball comes off flat. The direction of your wrist rotation completely determines your spin quality. Push forward with the wrist, don't pull it back. Drive the racket head forward. Let me walk you through the full sequence. First, the racket head drops down to the 5 o'clock position. Then you drive it up and forward to 2 o'clock. Not all the way to 12, stop at 2 o'clock. Don't be afraid you won't clear the net. Commit to that 2 o'clock finish. See, your fingers have no firmness, so you're just swinging from 5 o'clock up to 2 o'clock instead of pressing through the friction. Stay on the ball and brush upward to 2 o'clock. There, much better. I can tell immediately that ball has real spin. The moment you release, if the arc curves up and dips, you're brushing through properly. If the ball comes off flat and sinks straight down, you lost the friction. Then these key points are what truly make or break your loop. Watch, press the racket head to 2 o'clock, keep the face closed, drive forward through the ball. There it is. Feel how much more spin that produces. A good topspin loop needs friction and explosive force working together. What we just covered was stage 1, the friction stage. Stage 2 is the acceleration stage. Acceleration comes from the upper arm and forearm combined. Think about how to generate that crisp, loud contact sound. Even on a loop, I can produce that snap. Focus on finding that sound.